You are along for the ride with Mad Dog and Cole. I'm the king, Farrell.
Slick tires don't stop on grass.
Truth.
I decided to fly through the air and live in the sunlight and enjoy life as much as I could, and that's just what I'm doing.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm. Wait.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Eva Knievel, for those incredible words. We should all take a minute, live in the sunlight, do what we love. It don't got to be flying through the air on a motorcycle, but definitely live in the sunlight, take a minute, and enjoy what you love. Speaking of love and stuff, man, do I love the kicker marine system in my boat. I've been working on my boat. Had changed some oil lines and seawater pump, and I've got incredible kicker performance audio kicker marine system in my boat, and I just been jamming out to it. So awesome. You got a boat, got a side by side, got a car, got a truck, got a sandrail, need some headphones, hit them up, kicker.com. Of course, Bomber Eyewear, the Bomber floating eyewear, was so cool. I got to hook up with the bearded bomber himself, Jason, last weekend down at a Parker jet run what you brung jet ski race. Man, hung out with him for a bit. Good to see him. Had all the styles on display. Yeah, man, just so many styles, so many options and lens colors, polarized, non-polarized. I highly recommend you go with the full boat, polarized, and ANSI 87 OSHA proof safety lens, like the deep smoke boogie bombs I'm wearing right now. Check them out, bombereyewear.com. Course, our man Cole. Find him.
Hi.
Find him at the Premix Podcast on Instagram, sharing all his passion for desert racing, all things desert through the lens. Also available for your off-road MC work. You got an event, you need an MC, give Cole a call or hit him up at the Premix Podcast on Instagram. That's the at symbol ThePremixcast on Insta. Of course, Kelsey Morrell Film, making the magic happen on YouTube, and now also on YouTube podcasts. Kelsey Morrell Film. Find her for all your film and video needs on Instagram at Kelsey Morrell Film.
And of course, whether you're flying through the air on a motorcycle, whether you're jet ski racing, that wouldn't be possible without our first responders keeping us safe. Am I right?
You're absolutely correct.
So we'd like to take this moment to thank our first responders and, of course, the brave men and women in our armed forces, fighting here, fighting overseas, keeping us safe, let us have fun, keeping our freedoms free.
Absolutely. 100% respect and honor. Thank you all so much. So, man, we have got a goodie coming.
A legend.
Yeah. The one and only the Rev.
You
My
know him
pops.
well.
Yep. My pops himself. Fans, without further ado, not only do we have my dad, but we have my mom in the background, which you will see when it hits YouTube. But we got my dad, Pops, the Rev, Mr. Eugene S. Morrell, right here with us. So I think we want to just jump right into the meat and the potatoes here. I mean, first, thank you for being here, Pop.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, thanks to my sister for helping kind of work through getting this set up. Um, and man, I just want to say, you know, how how much of an honor it is to have you on my podcast, me and Cole's podcast. It means an awful lot.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been one of the whole reasons that I started this podcast was to get some of the stories out from people behind the stories behind the story, if you will. And it's been right since the beginning. One of the things is all your great stories and your you know legendary automotive and motors or automotive and motorsports existence, on top of being a missionary and traveling all over the country, and just everything you've done. So I kind of know some of the early stuff, but why don't you tell our fans where it started for you? Where did the motorsports stuff start for you? The hot rod stuff.
Well, I suppose it was just in the blood because my dad was kind of a hot rodder. He used to talk about taking his Willys 1927 or something like that, Willys, and running it over the sand dunes, and how he used to do different things to make it run faster. So I guess it's in the genes, And so when I started driving, of course, my first car was a 1937 Ford windowed coupe, and I was sitting on the side of the road, and I'd walk home from school. I was 15 years old, and it had a for sale sign on it. And so I went to the door and knocked and asked the guy if I could look at it and hear it run. He came out, and when he lifted the hood on it, it had a chrome carburetor on it. And that sold me. I had to have it. So I went home and told my dad I found a car I wanted to buy. And of course, we had the chicken wrench, and I worked for him and had some money in the bank. So I paid $125 for that 37 Ford. And first thing I did was took the wind wings off so you could see the chrome carburetor. Of course, I couldn't drive it because I was only 15. So, but then when I wasn't, just a few months till I was 16, and then I used to drive it to school. It was primer gray, and it would go faster in second gear than it would high gear. It'd do 67 miles an hour in second gear, and when you'd put it in high gear, it'd slow down to 63. And out of school, I'd pull up to the corner to leave the schoolyard there, and there was a little bit of gravel and sand, and you had to wind that thing up just as tight as it'd go and pop the clutch, and I'd get it out of it, and I thought that was big time. So my dad was afraid I was going to kill myself in it because it had mechanical brakes. And so I came home one day, and he said, "I found you a car." And I said, "Oh, yeah, a car?" He said, "Yeah." And my dad was driving a 1950 Hudson, and he found this 47 Hudson, had a paint job on it, and they were going to take my Ford and trade for what I paid for it. So I ended up trading for that Hudson, and I drove that for a while. So, but passion for racing, I guess, I was always going out to the drag strip, and then after your mother and I were married, I started stopping at this mechanical shop, and the guy's name was Dick Giddy, and he had a race car, and I'd go in there and look at his race car, and we got acquainted and started drinking coffee together, and he said, "I'm getting a new car." He was getting rid of the one he had, and I said, "What are you getting?" And he said, "I'm getting a 1956 Chevy two-door." And he said, "I'm going to set it up for racing." And he did that. And then he asked me if I would come on board with him and be one of his pit crew. So in 1956, I pitted for him, and we went to different races, mostly in Gardena, California. And his name was Dick Giddy. And he was okay driver, real good, but I think the thing I remember most was we made a trip up to San Francisco to race up there, and Parnelli Jones was one of the drivers, and I think that Richard Petty was there. It was in his early days, and so anyhow, we did that race up there, and then we came back home, and I did for him for a couple of years, and then we went to Alaska in 1959. And first thing I did, my father-in-law said, "Oh, there's a guy in my church here that has a race car, and he wants to meet you." So I met this guy, and he had a 34 Ford 5-windowed coupe. And so I started pitting for him and became his crew chief and so on. And we worked on that thing all the time, trying to make it go faster and trying to keep the wheels on the ground. And I remember we wanted to mill the heads, so we planed the heads on it, and we planed them a little bit too much. And when we started it up, and after we run a little bit, it was making a funny noise. So we shut it down, took it apart, and 2 of the valves fell right out. And we milled it so much the valves broke off, and it just rounded them on the top and the bottom there. So anyhow, we put a double head gasket on it and run it that way for several races. And the guy, I used to drive it, to test drive it. We'd do everything. We put a different rear end in. I forget what number it was, but anyhow, so we'd run in high gear, and you'd go second through the corner and then come out and pop it in high down the straight. And it worked okay. We never won any races with it, but I had a lot of fun fiddling with it and driving it, test driving and so on. So
That was
that
was a flathead, wasn't it?
yeah, flathead V8. Yeah, and it was we drilled out the carburetor, and he had of course had the heads milled, and then we had of course straight exhaust on it, came right out, headers right out into to a 6-inch pipe that ran out the side, and of course it sounded terrible. You couldn't hardly. But like a dummy, none of us wore earplugs back then. We just thought we were smart. So, but it did okay. But it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed that part of it. Then we were still in California when we had the chicken ranch there. I bought a 1956 Ford Courier, which is just like a station wagon, but it didn't have the windows in the side. And I ordered it. Had a V8 with overdrive, full-length seat in front, and that became my family car. And I used it in our business delivering eggs, but that was my hot rod, and that thing would really go. I mean, it'd do 110 in second gear overdrive. And so my dad told me one day, he said, the tires are getting in on the back here. He said, you're going to have to quit burning out so much. And I said, well, yeah, but these guys, they want to race me, and so we'd take off way to just squeal because there was no weight in the back. So anyhow, he said, well, you're buying the first set of tires. The company's not paying for those. But 4,500 miles, the tires were bald. So I bought the first set of tires. But I had a lot of fun with that. I put dual exhaust on it, and I'd get a ticket down there in California for loud exhaust because I had 18-inch Smitty's on it, and I'd get a ticket, and I'd taken the crossover piece on the front of the, and when they put the dual exhaust on, I kept the piece. So whenever I'd get a ticket for loud pipes, I'd take it home and disconnect the one side and put the crossover piece back on it and slide under there and remove the muffler and put a stock muffler on it and go down to the police station and get it checked. And they check it. Oh yeah, sounds fine. Okay. And I go home, slide under, take the muffler off, put the Smitty back on, put crossovers on it. So your mother said I paper a wall with the tickets I got. So I remember one day I was coming back from delivering eggs down, and I think it was over in Santa Monica, and I was coming up one of the boulevards there, and some guy pulled up alongside of me, and he raced his motor. He had dual exhaust. He had a little Mercury two-door top, and he raced his motor up, and I raced mine and everything. And there was water running across the street, just a puddle of water across the street. And so the light went green. Well, we both went out, and I hit that water, and man, the thing just swilled. It went about 100 yards right up there, just laying black straight out over. And I looked up, and there was a cop right behind me. So had another ticket. So, but yeah, I had some fun times. And then I ended up, I had a 55 Ford. We had a V8. It was a small 172 V8 in it. It was a little four-door. And I drove that for quite a while. That was, that thing was get up and go. And I kept the gear shift up so bad from slamming it into second that I'd have to take and stop and pull it down in high and pull it down real hard a few times before I could go back in low gear. So back then it was, clutch and go, bang, snap, and wind up as tight as you can in second. So, but then I settled down a little bit. So when I started having family and the kids, that 56 Ford Courier, Marilee's sister came and stayed with us one winter, and she was a very large girl. She was going to high school, but she weighed 350 pounds, and she liked to ride in the back. And so she ride in the back, and when I'd come up to a stoplight, if I was going to race somebody, I'd tell Judy, I'd say, Judy, slide back over the back tires. And she'd put weight back over those back tires, and that'd give me a little more traction. Off, she'd be screaming and yelling, did we beat them? Did we beat them? So a lot of fun, a lot of going on, but I always was mechanical because I guess my dad was mechanical, and so something broke, fix it, we could take it to the garage, and I remember when I had that Hudson, it started rattling a little bit, and Dad said, you need to drop the pan on that and shim up the bearings. And I said, what? So anyhow, he said, I'll show you. You take the pan off of it. So we put it up on blocks, and I took the pan off, and it had a badger type of bearing. So you'd drop the bearing off, and then you'd cut shims to go in it, and then put it back on, and it'd tighten the bearing up a little bit. So anyhow, that's how I learned. The transmission, I'd knock a transmission out, knock a second gear out of the transmission. Well, then even your mother down there and helped me pull the transmission on that 56 Ford. And we pull it out. I'd take it apart, take it down at the shop. They'd rebuild it for me, and I'd stick it back in. So, but
how many transmissions did you go through in that 56 Ford Courier?
Well, I just I put new bearings and new gears in it. So, but I rebuilt it, I can't remember, 3 or 4 times. So what would happen is that you'd miss the shift when you went to second, and it hit reverse, and it'd peel the barbs off the reverse gear. And when you go for a second, and if you do quite fast enough and let the clutch out too soon, well, bang, it'd hit that. And it just rang, and that was it. And I'd left home here. So
was it a three?
I had the ramp out. Yeah, 3 on the tree. Yeah. And I disconnected, switched the wires around on the overdrive so I could have overdrive in all 3 gears. And you had to be very careful when you did that. I would start off in low gear and then get up to 20 and let it shift into overdrive, low gear, and then step on it, and it'd go like 60 in low gear, in this low gear overdrive. And well, I really had fun when my folks lived out on the desert, and your mother and I would drive out there with the Ford, and I enjoyed pulling up along somebody doing about 65, 70 miles an hour and shift it back into second overdrive and then going around them, and their jaws would drop and they would look, what's the guy doing putting it in second gear at 65 miles an hour, 70. So and when I moved to Alaska, my dad started driving that car, that Ford Courier, and he would drive it out to this area where they were living. He worked in San Fernando, 120 miles out there, and he got a couple of tickets going out there. And he said one of the cops said something to him. The cop said, "Well, we've been laying for this car a long time." He said, "We've never been able to get him." And he said, "Oh, that must have been my son." Well, he said, "You're paying for it now." So, but that would only be like maybe 10 or 15 miles over the speed limit. So at 55, he was doing 65 or 70. So that thing could cruise at 100 beautifully, no problem at all. So anyhow, that's my story on cars. Other than, once you guys became teenagers, you started buying your own cars, and I guess I continued working on them. I bought that Volvo 1800, got into Volvos, and we built the motor in, and souped it all up, and that was a screamer, and that. So
Yeah, our fans
but-
don't though. Our fans don't know that stuff. So, but they I was thinking about while you were talking, I was thinking about that when we were up in Whitehorse, and I was a kid, young kid, and you had that I remember you got a new Volvo almost every year at that point. You had that old 142 that had the split exhaust manifold, and you put dual exhaust on it.
Yeah.
And where did that exhaust dump out?
It dumped out on the side, both on the driver's side, and both pipes came out there. And at nighttime, opened that thing up, put your foot right on the floor and right up, it sparks out the exhaust. So something was coming apart inside. So I decided it was time to get rid of it. So
I just remember how loud it was.
yeah, it was.
We went out. Sorry, go ahead.
Those 4-cylinder engines with Smitty mufflers on them are really loud, extremely loud. So
yeah, I remember we went out. I was with you one time when you were scouting, hunting.
Yeah.
And we were way out the Alaska highway, and I think one of your hunting guys, Wes or somebody said, "Man, you're not gonna." You said, "I didn't see anything," and I remember at coffee, and they were like, "Well, you're not gonna see anything driving that car. You're gonna scare them all off from 10 miles away."
Yeah. Yeah, I had that 74 144 Volvo, and it wasn't a hot rod or anything, but it did cruise. And I remember going out to headed out to CarMax, and went about 100 miles out there, 80 miles, something like that, all gravel road. And I come up behind some guy, and he was doing about 70. He stepped on it and pushed it up to 80, and so I fell back in behind him. Of course, gravel's flying, and we're both going to pull out to go around him again, and he stepped on it. Well, this time I just put her right to the floor. I was doing 110 miles an hour on gravel road when I went around this guy, and I just held that way for a while, way ahead of me. And so I got the road in the lodge up there. I go in there and get a coffee, and few minutes, this guy come pulling in. He pulled in, came in there and looked around. He said, "Are you guy driving that red Volvo?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man alive." He said, "I couldn't even keep up with that." So, crazy.
Yeah, I remember a whole bunch of road trips, to Fairbanks and Anchorage and Haines, and kind of grew up
Yeah.
road tripping up the Alaska Highway. And I remember, I don't even remember what, I was really young. I don't think it was the Ford van. Um, might have been before that, but I can remember. So, Cole, at some point, you need to Google Kluane Lake, Yukon, and the Alaska Highway goes around the end of Kluane Lake. And it's a big sweeping right hand turn for, I don't know, what would you say, Dad? How many miles is that turn?
Oh, I don't know. It's 2 or 3 miles, I suppose. Something like that. Goes
Yeah.
around the end of the lake there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can remember my dad sliding the car all the way around that whole turn, um, almost every time we took it.
Yeah.
That's got to be pretty exciting on the family trip. 2 miles of sliding.
Yeah. Well, I was always trying to be safe as well as crazy. So, but if there was traffic or cars coming or whatever, I didn't drive like that. But the roads were quite barren there most of the time, and so if you could stretch it out and so on. So we used to leave. It was 600 miles from White Horse to Fairbanks, and we used to leave after church on Sunday. And Mary's parents lived in Fairbanks, and we'd pack a lunch before we went to church, and we come home, change clothes, jump in the car, and head to Fairbanks. We drive straight 600 miles, and we drive straight through that. And 400 miles of it was gravel road. Once we got to Alaska, then it was paved road. Paved road wasn't much better than the gravel because there was so many frost heaves in it. You were going up and down like this, all the time. So you had to be real careful. But we'd make a trip like that, spend a few days with her parents and do some shopping and then head back to Canada. So
I remember we used to so that's where all this road tripping, so Cole, all this road tripping stuff from me and the whole along for the ride idea came from literally I grew up traveling, road tripping.
And obviously the motorsports
yeah.
runs in the blood 3-4 generations now. I mean, no surprise there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my dad he used to tell stories about his whippet. He said he had a whippet. I don't know if you've ever heard of a whippet, but he had a whippet. And he said that was the fastest car he had. It'd do like 62 miles an hour. So, but he was racing people all the time. And either his Willys, he had Willys, or had his whippet. And I know he used to tell me about the whippet. It was pretty fancy. It had wind wings inside, which weren't common. They had the roll up windows and everything, but then they had wind wings that you'd put on there that could tilt in and have the wind come into the car and so on. So, but he used to talk about going out and running the sand dunes and then racing somebody home after work and things like that. And so he told me about he was coming home. He had actually my mother sister was some guy had taken her off. She was only 14. They were dating or together anyhow, and he taken her off someplace. And my dad went and found him and made her go home. And they were parked someplace. And he said, "This is good. This, you shouldn't be here, blah, 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 whatever." So he took her home. So that night or the next day after work, he was headed home, and he went about I don't know how many miles it was out to their farm, but he had to go across there was a river and a little short bridge there. And Dad said when he came up, he was headed home, he said that he was doing about 40, 45 miles an hour, and he drive along there, and there's lights, bumpy road, the lights caught something, and when he did slow down, he just kept going. When he got up there, somebody had strung a wire across the bridge, and they intended to catch his windshield and suppose and wipe him out or whatever. But he said he just put the pedal to metal, and he said that front of that thing raised up. It raised up just enough. It caught just under the radiator cap. That wire did, and he said it just kind of never even hesitated, but he said it went bing. So he said he knew who did it. So he said the next day when he saw the guy, he had a little conversation with him. So
Say there was probably a little mad dog in Mr. Ray B. Morrell too.
yeah. Anyhow, I bought my dad this stuffed Dalmatian dog with a little red fire hat. And of course, when he passed away, well, I kept it. And so we're downsizing to try to get that room ready for Legine to move in. And so that was up on Mom's file cabinet. And so I got it down, I put it in a bag. I'm going to send it home to you with Kirsten.
Oh, wow.
So
that's awesome. Thank
so
you.
you can have Dad's Dalmatian stuffed dog.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you. Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
now when you were growing up, when you started driving and stuff, you were in the prime time really of the Southern California hot rod culture, I would say, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was in the 50s. That was the day. I was 16, and I had when I go down to my sister's in Texas, her husband would let me drive their car on the farm. They had acreage there, and I drive around, and then my dad got to let me drive halfway to town and stuff. So when I turned 16, I went to California DMV to get my driver's license and took the test, and they gave me a permit. And I said, no, I don't want a permit. I want a driver's license. And they said, well, you got to learn how to drive. And I said, I already know how to drive. They said, how could you learn how to drive if you're just turned 16 yesterday? And I said, well, I used to go down to my sister's Texas, and I learned to drive down there because you can drive down there at 14. So they believed me, and I took the other test and got my driver's license the day I was 16. So, and we had a chicken ranch, at that time, and we're delivering eggs house to house. And the day I got my driver's license, my mom handed me the keys to the car, and she says, okay, the delivery is all your responsibility. And so from that day on, for the next several years until I went to Alaska, I did all the delivery of the eggs and everything. And we had a 1950 Hudson, and we take the back seat out of that Hudson, and we load the back into that back seat with eggs. That's what I drove out of. That Hudson of that, he bought that aluminum head and a high-speed rear end. It was a Super 6. And people would say, oh, a big car like that can't burn rubber. I said, do you want that? And so I'd get out and I'd show them that thing had burned rubber, and I could even get second gear rubber out of that. So I shifted a second gear, get us a little second gear rubber out of it. So, but that was a fast little car. So I guess it wasn't little, it was big then.
Right. That's the one that you used to do? Is that the one you used to drive up to see Mom when you were courting?
Yeah, I used to drive it up there. And when we were courting, even before then, when we double date, you could ride 4 in the front seat. And so all four of us ride in the front seat when you go double dating and stuff. So, but I drove that up there till we got married. When we got married, I traded the 47 off and bought a 51 Hudson. But it had an automatic transmission, not a standard. The Dad had a 3-speed on the tree. So,
I I remember a story from one of your cousins that I met about one of your adventures heading up to Oregon um, to see my mom, who wasn't, you weren't married yet, but you were going up there to see her. And it was something about going up the grapevine at night in a Hudson at really high speed.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably true.
Was that Grandpa's
That
Hudson?
back then it was Highway 99 instead of 5, you know. It
Yep.
was just a 3-lane highway, Highway 99. So, I'd leave San Fernando and drive to Alaska, Oregon, and that was before freeways. They didn't have to go through Sacramento, all their back streets, the capital, and everything. And I'd leave and I'd drive it in 20, 21 hours from there to drive straight through. So,
That's impressive, no doubt.
yeah. So,
Now, were there ever eggs in the back of the Hudson when someone would line up next to you at a light?
well, yeah, occasionally, but not very often. I had to be very careful with the eggs. When I had the Ford, I got rear-ended with a load of eggs, and that was a nightmare. But I always packed the eggs so that if somebody wanted to race or get a little drag strip, well, I had them all situated so that they weren't going to go anyplace. So I knew there was always that chance. So, but the HUD, we used that for several years, and then we got the last week that I was in the business. I left and went to Alaska in 1959, and my dad still had the business, and he'd taken his brother in as a partner, and he was my favorite uncle, and it just didn't work for me to be boss over him, and it just wasn't working out. So anyhow, Marilee's parents had gone to Fairbanks, Alaska, and I came home one day and told Marilee, I said, we're going to move to Alaska. She said, you're not going to leave here. All of your family's here, your church here, everything is here. I said, no, we're going to Alaska. And I had literally had to move out to my parents' place so I could get the house fixed up to sell. And we sold the house and took the profit from the house, went and bought tits. And we left, flew out of Burbank, California, and flew to Seattle. And it was 82 degrees that day we left Burbank and flew into Seattle. And the next day we flew on Fairbanks. And we landed in Fairbanks, Alaska, and it was in April, and it was 22 below zero. And I just adapted. I just liked it and adapted. And, I was out sewing short sleeves and everything. And Marilee's dad just couldn't believe.
And I love to hear the story about that Ford, though, and how you would surprise people so well. How well that car would take off if you get some traction in the back of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a up and go pretty good. I didn't win all the time, but I had a lot of fun with it, and it it was a nice little car. It was a good family car. We went camping in it, and we made trips in it, and we put a mattress in the back and sleep in there, and so on, and I put a lot of miles on it, and my dad put a lot of miles on it after I left. So
Yeah, so it's stuck in the family, and you could camp in it, and like you said, do the deliveries,
yeah,
and so it ended up being the first universal perfect vehicle for you.
he kept it for a number of years after he sold the chicken ranch, and had it in his garage. And one time I was down there from Alaska, and I went and he said somebody broke into the garage and they took an axe to it. They cut holes in the hood and in the side. And so I pulled the hood up, the carburetor was gone, and I looked down, the transmission was gone. Somebody gone in there and just stripped everything out of it. But he had it hauled off to the junkyard. And later I said, if I had known then what I know now, I would have said, save it for me, because I could have fixed it.
Yeah, of course.
I
Yep.
learned how the body work and painting and all of that. So I restored several cars. It restored a couple of Volvo 1800s and restored a couple of 122 wagons. And I restored a 65 122 that belonged to my son, my oldest son, Leroy, and restored that for him to round up everything. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
that car now lives down in Kingman, Arizona. Which
yeah,
that's that was a beautiful job. The 62 and a half Volvo P1800 that was the Jensen body P1800 that that Dab restored, and I was blessed enough to work with him on it and help him and do some of the body work and do a lot of the grunt work and a lot of floor sweeping. But that car, Dad ended up putting in a Concours d'Elegance in Minter Gardens, British Columbia, right?
yeah, yeah, just out of Chilliwack.
Yeah. And it placed
Yeah.
You what?
It took first place in my class.
Yeah, post-war European sports car. Finished ahead of a 55 Mercedes Gullwing that was a trailer queen and a Jaguar E-Type that was a trailer queen. And I remember we drove it out there and
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun time. You drove it home. I came home and then you drove it home. Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know I won until you came because it was on Sunday.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then so you were in Fairbanks in 59, working for Santa's Bakery and all that. And then you had call to the ministry and
Yeah.
you loaded up the family that was the 3 kids and old station wagon, wasn't it? And headed for Oklahoma.
No, I had a 55 Pontiac 2-door. And I put a trailer hitch on it and towed a 9-foot trailer with all of our belongings in it from Fairbanks to Oklahoma City. And that Pontiac I bought from Mary's cousin. It was real nice. It was been reupholstered and it was a 2-door, wasn't a hardtop, but just a 2-door post. And then while we were in Oklahoma, the next summer I had we were going down the Alaska Highway and of course I had to shift it second go up the hills and I hit the clutch and the clutch went right to the lock and the came out. Of course I slipped it out of gear and I realized the clutch wasn't working, so I kept revving the motor up and so on until I finally got it slipped into second gear, made it up that hill. They got up to the top and climbed underneath it, and part of the clutch linkage came off. And so anyhow, I used a stove bolt and some baling wire and some friction tape and fixed that so it would work. And I said, well, when I get to Dawson Creek, I'll go to the GM garage and get a new part. Well, I got to Dawson Creek and it was a holiday weekend. So I said, well, I'll wait till I get to Prince George. So I got to Prince George and they didn't have parts. So I said, well, I'll wait till I get to Seattle. By the time I got to Seattle, it was working so good, I just left it. So I drove it all the way to Oklahoma City that way. And then when we got ready to leave to go back to Alaska for the summer work that year, I traded that off and got a 59 Ford station wagon. And that's what we drove up to Alaska that summer and drove it back. And then we drove it, when we went back in 1963, we drove it back to Anchorage and then drove it on to Fairbanks. And then Marilee's parents sold it for us. And we took our first pastorate out of Nome, Alaska at that time. And that's where you were born. So
Yeah.
we went to Nome, and your mother was expecting our fourth child at that time. And we got there. We were only there about 6 weeks, and she delivered early, and the baby only lived 5 hours, little girl. And she passed away. So the first funeral I had in my ministry was one of my own children. And it was very difficult, very hard. But, you know, then we said, well, we'll try again. And that's when you came along. So you weren't a girl, you were another boy. So your mother was disappointed. So then we kept welfare children. And that's when Lorin came into our home to keep. He was a welfare child. And a year later, we said, oh, this is going to become our child. So we decided to adopt her. Her become so close. And there's only 10 months difference in your age. So that's how we got our last girl. So, but that was a great time in Nome. We enjoyed it.
Yeah.
One of the things we used to do.
Sorry, go ahead.
One of the things I used to do in Nome was I used to herd reindeer. Yeah. I used to herd reindeer in Nome. They had a herd of reindeer up there, and one of the reindeer herders, his mother went to my church, and so I got acquainted with this guy, and I went out there. The guy that was head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, I got acquainted with him because he saw me out there a lot. And then he called me one day and he said, need somebody to go with Johnson and Raymond to pick up the reindeer herd back over the hill. And I need another guy with a snow machine. Would you like to go? And I said, sure, I'd love to go. He said, okay. He said, I'll pay you. I said, oh, okay, fine. So anyway, he said, go out and touch base with them and see when they're going to go. So I went out until I was 14 miles out there on the snow machine. So I went out and touched base with them, and they said, oh, we're going to go day after tomorrow, be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay. So I got up early and left in time to be out there by 6. Well, got there, we had to have kupiak, it was coffee, Eskimo word. So we had coffee, and then we hit the trail. It was about, maybe, 10, 15 miles back in the tundra. There's no trees up there. It's just all tundra. And we got back there and found the herd, and there was about 700 reindeer in this herd, and we gathered them all in and drove them into the camp. And then they said, 2 days we're going to have a corralling. So the guy says, I want you to come up and help us with the corralling. Said, okay. So I went out and helped him with the corralling of the reindeer, and the University of Alaska was doing a lot of testing of the reindeer because they had a lot of problems with clubfoot, and they were vaccinating and castrating, all that kind of stuff. So I helped him with that, and then when I got through, the guy said, you want me to pay you cash, or how do you want to be paid? He said, I can either give you cash or I can give you a reindeer. I said, well, I got 3 kids to feed, 4 kids to feed. I said, we can use the meat more than the money. And he said, well, I'll give you 3 reindeer. I said, that's fine with me. So I went to Raymond. I said, they're going to give me 3 reindeer. And they were slaughtering that day, paying the Eskimos off that were working for them. And he said, don't get your reindeer today. He said, wait. He said, in about a week after they've settled down from their corralling and everything, we'll have a killing for our own, and we'll kill for you then. We'll send you word when your reindeer's ready. I said, okay. So about a week later, some kid knocked on my door, a little Eskimo boy, and he said, Raymond told me to tell you your reindeer's ready. Okay. So I hooked up my sled, hustled out there and got my 3 reindeer, and brought them back into town, gave them to the butcher, and he cut off for me and everything. So that helped us out a great deal in meat. So I got to do that every year. I'd go out, we do the corralling and herd reindeer. And I was out there one day, and Raymond had 2 reindeer hooked up to a dog sled. And he said, you want to go for a ride? I said, sure. Who wouldn't want to go for a ride in a with reindeer behind a dog sled? So anyhow, I jumped in the sled, and he got on the runners and back, and he mushed those reindeer out, and we went down, made a big loop back, and we got back up. The reindeer were all lathered up with sweat, and foam and everything. So he stopped, and I got out of the sled, and he said, "You're much too fat." I probably didn't weigh 200 pounds then, but he said I was too fat. So made his reindeer work too hard. So I said, well, how many people have ridden in a dog sled with reindeer being pulled, So I've had some remarkable experiences that, a lot of people haven't had the chance. And God is good. And that in reference to, where your mother's at, she had that stroke a year ago, and they just graduated her from her speech therapy, and she's doing remarkably well. Just praise God for that mercy to our family for her.
Oh, for sure. That's, I know Cole and I talked about this last year, and I've been keeping our listeners updated on Mom's progress. And so there's your update, most recent update on Mom's progress, folks. Right from my pop himself. And yeah, we're so happy and so blessed. Man, it's just, it's really.
Yeah. And they need to know she's going to be 89 in November.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't be telling
Mom will
people
be 89.
that.
She's pushing. And I'll be 87 next month. Or in August.
August, yeah. You still don't push it. You still got a month, almost 2 months. So
yeah, I look back, I say, where'd the time go? I can remember when I used to say, yeah, 70. And how did I get to be 80? I don't know. Just went too fast.
Well, we've got so many more stories to cover that hopefully we can get you back on 2 or 3 times, because I don't want to go too long, because I know you probably still need to eat dinner, and I know we have family there visiting. So, but the snowmobile, Cole, that Dad talks about in Nome, and he was hustling out there. That if I remember right, that was a Ski-Doo 10-horse snowmobile, wasn't it?
Yeah. And like everything else I owned, I had to soup it up, of course. I couldn't afford a 15-horse, so I bought this 10.5 horse, and I kept looking at ways to make it go faster. So the first thing I did is bought a big carburetor and replaced the carburetor. Well, that made it go a mile or two faster. And then I was talking to the Polaris dealer down there one day, and they had Dodge as well. And I was talking to the son, and we were talking about snowmobiles and racing and hopping them up and different things. And he said, well, if you want to make that 10-horse go a little faster, you should mill the head on it. And I said, well, who mills heads? And he says, nobody. But I'll show you how you can mill the head on that and get a little more compression out of it. And I said, oh, okay. He said, get a piece of mirror, 1/4-inch glass mirror. And he said, get some 600 wet sandpaper. And he said, you put that head on that wet sandpaper, and he said, you move it very slowly around in a circle. And he told me how many times to go. And then you wipe it off and clean it, and then you do it again. And I don't remember how many times I had to do that, but I did that, shave that down a little bit and increase the compression on that 10-horse, like outrun 15-horse machines then. And so people were really surprised. I thought that was a 10.5 horse. Well, it is. So, but yeah, it was a pretty good going little machine. So to put all 5 of you kids in the sled, Mom on the back, and we'd still go out in the country and climb some hills. So
and that's that is the first, probably my first experience with motorsports. Was Pop used to limit the throttle and put me on it and let me ride it.
Yeah, yeah. We were out in the country and I did that. We were out with another couple and I fixed the throttle so it would just barely go. And we were watching you cut out across the snow there. All of a sudden I said, he can't turn that thing around. We got to catch him. So we started running in the deep snow trying to catch up with you. And I finally got a hold of the back end of the machine and you dragged me along for a while till I finally slowed you down enough to get up. But yeah, lots of fun.
I think I was probably 3.
Yeah, you're about 3. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's how I grew up, Cole. Well, Pop, thank you so much for being here.
yeah,
We wanna get you back on and get, we still have Whitehorse, we still have the Volvos, we still have so much to cover, including your work in the mission field and church and with the Nazarene Church. And man, we've got so much to cover that hopefully we can get 2 or 3 more episodes with you this year. Folks, be patient with the audio. We're going to work on that for next time. But for now, I think we should probably call it a night and let Pops go get some dinner. Cole gets the option to have parting questions and comments for you. Cause I'm like, okay. I know all the stories. So Cole, it's up to you, Bubba.
All right. If you had to pick one car out of all your years you had, if you got to have one back today, what would it be?
The 56 Ford Courier. Yeah. That was my favorite car. I've watched to see if I could find one sometime to buy it, but I never see. There are very few. So
extremely rare. Well, we'll have to keep scouring the internet, you and me, Lorin, and see what we can find.
I look all the time.
You do? All right. Well, now you have a third person looking.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good to meet you, Cole.
Yeah, you as well, Gene. I appreciate the stories and the time. Okay,
no problem. I just hope it's not boring.
Far from.
I got 80 some years to share. Also, Marilee and I will celebrate our 70th wedding anniversary January 2nd this year.
Wow, congratulations.
70 years.
Wow.
So we were both teenagers when we got married, and they said it won't work, never last. Well, 70 years later, here we are. And we have 5 kids, 15 grandkids, and 22 great-grandkids. Okay, goodbye.
Thanks, Pops.
Okay, love you.
Love you.
Wow. Yeah.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
I mean, no kidding, talking about we only have, 86 more years of stories to go.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, like when we do these, sometimes I like to think in my head what I'm going to put as the show description, as little teasers. And it's like, I have an abundance to pick from in the last hour.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've really only like barely scraped the surface,
Yeah. I mean, I raced an RC car one time at Lake Mission Viejo, and I won't shut up about it. Meanwhile, he's glossing over. He's like, yeah, we used to run circle track cars and at the drag strip. And then I moved here and then I do 800-mile road trips. And it's like, hang on.
Yeah, it's, but that's, it's those road trips and stuff. I mean, that's how I grew up. When you lived, in Nome, Alaska, you flew everywhere and then drove. When you lived in Whitehorse, you drove everywhere. And the closest city was big city was Fairbanks, Alaska. It's 650 40 miles, 625 miles,
Yeah, and that's the next biggest big city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the closest McDonald's.
Oh man, I can only imagine how good that tasted after being on the road.
Yes, sir. And that was the closest Mexican restaurant.
I've had Alaskan Mexican. It's not my favorite, but it sure beats nothing. I probably
My
had
pa-
it in Fairbanks.
yeah, Pop found this place that was like authentic, and
Yeah,
at least for us at the time, and being from Southern California, he had a pretty good taste for it.
for
So
sure. Yeah, he wouldn't put up with no
yeah,
imitation.
no, it wasn't no Taco Bell for sure. So, anyways, man, what an honor it is to have my pops on. This is one of the reasons that I started along for the ride, was to get these stories out to people. These are I take for granted to an extent these stories that I grew up with. Um, and, none of us are getting any younger. And it's like, I want to get these stories down, locked in digitally, while we can.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
man, I'm so excited that he came on here. Thanks again to my sis and for working through the details um, to get it happening. I'm grateful for that. And with that, Cole, parting statement.
Parting statement is if you want to go fast on the drag strip, you need some ballast weight over the axle.
Yes, for sure. We need to thank Kicker Performance Audio. Find them at kicker.com online or at Kicker Audio on Instagram. Appreciate their ongoing and continuous support. Bomber Eyewear. Find them online at bombereyewear.com or on Instagram at Bomber Eyewear. So grateful for them. Of course, the Premix Podcast. Find them on Instagram at the Premix Podcast. And Cole, thank you so much for all you do. And of course, Kelsey Morrell Film, turning your video dreams into reality. That sounds weird.
Yeah, it worked.
Find her on Instagram at Kelsey Morrell Film. Next time we have Pops on, we will work on the audio. I hope you're able to be patient and enjoy it as much as we have. With that, happy 6/7.
And happy 41 episodes.
Happy episode 41. Thank you. I want to give a special shout out to just Cole for making this happen. This is like I said, one of the reasons that Along for the Ride came to be. And I'm so grateful, Cole, for your abilities and willingness to put up with my crap to get to where we're at now, episode 41.
You're very welcome. Thank you for getting world-class guests on and coordinating everything and scheduling everything and getting sound clips and traveling across the world so we have something to talk about.
Heck yeah, glad to do it. You are along for the ride. Mad Dog out.